The chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed supernova alerts, extinction petitions, and declarations of war that reshaped entire star systems. Yet never, in its thousand-year history, had silence felt so heavy. The transmission arrived without ceremony. No fleet escort. No diplomatic preamble. No symbolic gestures meant to soften the message. Just a simple line of text encoded in every known galactic language. Humanity hereby withdraws from all diplomatic relations, effective immediately. For several seconds, no one spoke. The Avesian High Speaker adjusted his crest feathers, waiting for the expected continuation, a demand, perhaps, or a veiled threat disguised as negotiation. Humanity had always been unconventional, but never reckless. The message ended there. No explanation followed. No terms. No requests for reconsideration. Just a quiet signature verifying the message's authenticity through cryptographic systems only humans fully understood. Murmurs erupted across the chamber. "This is a tactic," declared Councillor Gelt of the Torv Collective. "They want leverage. They have always negotiated through unpredictability," another added. "It is their cultural pattern." The Council had studied humanity for centuries. They were emotional yet strategic, idealistic yet pragmatic. Their history was filled with contradictions. A species capable of devastating war, yet strangely committed to rebuilding what they destroyed. Humans negotiated hard, but they negotiated. They always stayed at the table. Until now. Within hours, confirmation signals began arriving from across the galaxy. Human embassies powered down simultaneously. Automated systems sent polite departure notices to their host governments before sealing archives and initiating long-term data encryption. Human trade convoys altered course without explanation. Joint research stations reported that human personnel had left behind perfectly organized records, categorized so precisely that even rival species could understand them. Military liaison officers simply vanished from shared command structures. No sabotage, no protest, no delay, just absence. It was unsettling how respectful the withdrawal was. By the end of the first rotation cycle, humanity had removed itself from over 12,000 agreements. Trade networks began recalculating supply chains. Some systems experienced minor delays, others barely noticed the shift. At first glance, the disruption seemed manageable, but analysts soon noticed something more troubling. Human patrol fleets were no longer visible along volatile border regions. For generations, humanity had quietly stationed small but highly capable ships near contested territories. Officially, these deployments were described as navigation safety support. Unofficially, their presence had prevented at least 9 major conflicts. Now those ships were gone. Observers expected immediate instability. Instead, something strange occurred. Pirate activity dropped to zero within 20 standard hours. Smuggling corridors fell silent. Long-standing insurgent groups halted operations entirely. Even ancient conflict zones, where hostility had endured for centuries, reported an eerie calm. It was as though someone had flipped a switch across the stars. Council intelligence struggled to explain it. "Criminal organizations require opportunity," stated analyst Voren. "Opportunity has vanished." "How?" demanded the High Speaker. "No known enforcement fleet has expanded operations. No new peacekeeping initiatives had been announced. No emergency alliances had formed. Yet violence had simply paused." Long-range scans began detecting unusual patterns in deep space. Unregistered signals. Encrypted bursts of data. Movement just beyond standard detection thresholds. Nothing openly hostile. Nothing openly friendly. Just presence. A junior observer from a minor waterworld spoke, hesitantly. Honored Council, many independent colonies are reporting automated alerts once maintained by human systems are now offline. What systems? Asked the High Speaker. The observer swallowed nervously. We do not know. They were never disclosed in diplomatic records. Across the chamber, unease spread. Humanity had always been transparent about trade and research, yet strangely quiet about their security initiatives. Their representatives often described certain programs as preventative infrastructure, boring phrases that discouraged further inquiry. Now those quiet programs were gone, and no one knew what they had been preventing. A delayed packet finally arrived from the edge of mapped space, transmitted through a relay previously operated by human engineers. The message was brief. Monitoring services discontinued. Attached was a list. It contained thousands of coordinates, thousands of locations previously marked as low-priority observation zones. As analysts began cross-referencing the data, the chamber's environmental controls struggled to compensate for the sudden drop in temperature across multiple species. Many of those coordinates corresponded to regions long considered unstable, or dangerous, or unexplored. The High Speaker finally broke the silence. Send a formal request for clarification. Communications officers complied immediately, transmitting priority-level diplomatic signals toward every known human channel. Hours passed. Then days. Every message returned the same result. Delivery confirmed. No response. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy realized something profoundly unsettling. Humanity had not issued an ultimatum. They had simply closed the door. At first, the Galactic Council treated humanity's silence as a diplomatic maneuver, a calculated attempt to force concessions through uncertainty. Emergency committees formed, analysts compared historical negotiation patterns, and political factions argued over the best approach to lure the humans back to the table. But as the cycles passed, the tone shifted. Something deeper was unfolding. It began with a routine systems audit on the border colony of Velmora 3, a modest agricultural world orbiting a dim orange star. Without human logistical support, the colony's orbital monitoring grid required recalibration. The task should have been trivial. Instead, technicians discovered an entire layer of encrypted infrastructure embedded beneath the colony's sensor network. The encryption signature was human. Council investigators assumed it was abandoned research code, a leftover experiment, perhaps. But once decrypted, the files revealed something astonishing. A fully autonomous early warning system designed to detect gravitational distortions associated with microsingularity weapons, devices outlawed millennia ago after devastating half a spiral arm. The colony government had never requested such protection. There was no treaty requiring it. No official record even acknowledged its existence. Yet humanity had installed it quietly, and maintained it for nearly 2 centuries. Velmora 3 was not unique. Within days, similar discoveries began appearing across dozens of worlds. Hidden radiation buffers on medical stations. Undocumented asteroid deflection arrays protecting shipping lanes. AI-assisted evacuation protocols buried deep within civilian infrastructure. Human engineers had left detailed maintenance instructions behind, carefully translated into every relevant language. At the bottom of each file was the same simple note: "In case we are not available." The council chamber grew more uneasy with each revelation. Councillor Marith of the Kesari Combine reviewed a recovered human archive from an abandoned embassy. Her scaled hands trembled as she displayed the contents to the assembly. Thousands of sealed agreements appeared on the projection field. Minor defense pacts. Emergency contingency plans. Quiet cooperation treaties signed with species so small they barely registered in Council census data. Many of these civilizations had never been represented in the Council at all. Human diplomats had apparently negotiated protective agreements without ever seeking recognition or leverage. They gained nothing from these contracts, Meredith whispered. Incorrect, replied analyst Voran softly. They gained stability. More reports followed. A deep space observatory discovered an inactive human drone network positioned along a dark interstellar corridor known only for sensor interference. The drone's logs indicated centuries of monitoring activity directed at something simply labeled unclassified migratory hazard. Another archive revealed human-operated containment fields built around a cluster of unstable protostars whose irregular flares had once threatened nearby colonies. The containment structures were now powering down. The realization spread slowly, like cold water seeping through the chamber's atmosphere. Humanity had never announced these operations, never requested funding, never demanded political concessions in exchange. They had simply taken responsibility, and now that responsibility was gone. The most alarming discovery came from a derelict listening station located in orbit around a dead world beyond Council jurisdiction. The station had long been catalogued as inactive debris, a relic of early exploration efforts. But when investigators accessed its systems, they found the core still operational, running, watching. The station's central log contained a repeating entry updated every standard hour for the past 400 years. Containment field stable. Contained around what? Further analysis revealed the station was positioned near the dormant edge of an ancient machine swarm, self-replicating constructs left behind by an extinct civilization known for weaponizing automated production. For centuries, the swarm had shown no activity. For centuries, humanity had quietly ensured it stayed that way. Now the station had powered down. No replacement system had activated. No maintenance crew had arrived. The swarm's outer drones had already begun shifting. Slowly. Awakening. Back in the council chamber, the High Speaker's voice was barely steady. How many similar programs did they operate? Analyst Voran hesitated before answering. We do not yet know. The chamber lighting dimmed as new files streamed into the central archive. Each discovery told the same story. Humanity had not withdrawn from diplomacy in anger. They had withdrawn from obligation. For generations, the Council had debated trade tariffs, territorial influence, and political advantage. Meanwhile, the newest member species had been quietly reinforcing the galaxy's foundations, patching weaknesses no one else had noticed or cared about. Now those invisible supports were disappearing, and the structure they upheld was beginning to tremble. For the first time, the Council was forced to confront a possibility more unsettling than hostility. Humanity had not needed recognition. They had not needed gratitude. But they had needed trust. And when that trust had eroded, they had simply stopped helping. The High Speaker looked across the silent assembly. We must re-establish contact, he said. But even as the words left his beak, a deeper fear lingered unspoken. What if humanity had already decided the galaxy was no longer worth protecting? The silence did not break with an explosion or a declaration of war. It cracked quietly. At the very edge of the mapped galaxy, far beyond profitable trade lanes and political influence, lay the colony of Iridian's Reach, a remote outpost inhabited by fewer than 2 million beings from 7 minor species. It was not strategically important. It had no rare resources, no valuable infrastructure, and no major military presence, which was precisely why it had always been considered safe. Iridian's Reach had once been used as a waypoint for exploratory vessels, its orbital docks maintained jointly by a small coalition of frontier governments. Human engineers had contributed to its navigation network decades earlier, installing advanced long-range sensors capable of detecting anomalies in deep space. Like many human contributions, the equipment had required minimal maintenance and had never caused concern, until it stopped transmitting. The first indication of trouble came when automated supply ships arrived at the colony's outer checkpoint and received no docking authorization. Attempts to raise traffic control failed. Emergency override codes were rejected. The ships circled the silent station for nearly 6 hours before transmitting a priority alert to the Council. By the time an investigation fleet arrived, Iridian's Reach was already gone. Fragments of orbital habitat drifted in irregular patterns around the dim blue star. Several structures appeared intact at first glance, but closer scans revealed melted alloy frameworks and signs of extreme electromagnetic disruption. Escape pods were missing. So were long-range communication buoys. It was as if the colony had attempted evacuation and never completed it. The investigation fleet recovered a single functional distress beacon buried within debris from the central command ring. Its message repeated continuously on emergency frequency, requesting human assistance. The signal timestamp indicated it had begun broadcasting 3 days after humanity withdrew from diplomatic communication. 3 days. That was how long it had taken for something to test the galaxy's new vulnerability. Council officials immediately classified the incident, but word spread quickly among independent systems. Colonies began reviewing their own emergency protocols. Many discovered references to human-developed contingency systems embedded deep within infrastructure. Systems now offline. A deeper search of Iridian's Reach archives revealed fragments of sensor logs recorded shortly before the colony fell silent. Unidentified objects had appeared at the far edge of the system, small, irregular masses moving without detectable propulsion signatures. Initial analysis had categorized them as harmless debris clusters. Human sensor algorithms, however, had flagged them differently. The original classification label remained visible in archived code. Pattern match, pre-swarm formation behavior. The meaning was unclear to most Council analysts, but buried within restricted archives was a historical footnote referencing early human encounters with autonomous machine colonies capable of silent expansion across interstellar distances. Human reports had described such entities using a single unsettling phrase. They do not announce arrival. They simply begin. The Council had dismissed those warnings as theoretical speculation. Until now. Additional data packets recovered from Iridian's Reach revealed that emergency signals had been routed toward a human-operated relay station located several light-years away. The relay had acknowledged receipt, then transmitted an automated response. Monitoring network inactive. No further assistance followed. Search teams discovered no signs of conventional battle. No weapon signatures matched known military arsenals. Instead, structural analysis indicated localized molecular destabilization, technology far more precise than typical destructive force. Entire sections of the colony had simply separated at the atomic level. One unsettling detail emerged from the logs. Moments before the primary sensor grid failed, the system registered a temporary stabilization pulse, a familiar signature previously associated with human containment technology. For a fraction of a second, whatever had attacked the colony appeared to hesitate. Then the stabilization field vanished. The attack resumed. Analyst Voren presented the findings to the Council with visible reluctance. It appears the colony's survival window depended on a support system humanity had maintained. "And now?" asked the High Speaker quietly. "Now the system is offline." The implications spread through the chamber like a shadow. Iridian's reach had not been defended by its own capabilities. It had been protected by infrastructure no one had realized existed. Infrastructure humanity had quietly provided. Elsewhere across the galaxy, monitoring stations began detecting similar anomalies at the edges of explored space. Unusual movement patterns. Dormant signals activating. Old dangers stirring. Many of those early warning networks had been designed, installed, or maintained by human specialists, and all of them were now silent. A junior council archivist uncovered a centuries-old proposal submitted by humanity during their early membership period. The document had recommended a cooperative initiative titled Distributed Preventative Defense Framework. Its purpose had been simple: identify emerging threats before they became crises. Maintain shared infrastructure to contain dangers unlikely to respect political borders. The proposal had been declined. Several council factions had considered it unnecessary, overly cautious, expensive. Now the council faced a grim realization. Humanity had implemented the framework anyway, alone, without permission, without recognition. Iridian's reach was only the first visible consequence of its absence. As emergency signals multiplied across frontier space, one truth became increasingly difficult to ignore. Humanity's silence was not empty. It was the sound of countless unseen safeguards switching off, and something out there had already noticed. The human vessel did not arrive with the thunder of weapons fire or the spectacle of a diplomatic convoy. It simply appeared. Long-range sensors first detected the ship at the outer boundary of Council-controlled space, emerging from a region of dark interstellar drift where gravitational interference made precise navigation difficult. The vessel's trajectory did not follow standard approach vectors. It did not request permission to enter monitored lanes. It moved with quiet certainty. Station observers initially assumed it was a courier, perhaps an automated probe delivering delayed communication. Humanity had always favored efficiency over ceremony. Then the scans resolved. The ship was massive, not in the crude sense of oversized battleships or cargo haulers, but in the deliberate way of something designed for endurance rather than intimidation. Its hull geometry did not match any known human military classification. It had no visible weapons, no escort fleet, no identifying insignia beyond a simple etched marking near the forward arc. 01. Council Defense Forces mobilized immediately, dispatching patrol cruisers to intercept. Standard hail frequencies were transmitted in every known language. No reply. The vessel adjusted course slightly, maintaining a steady velocity that suggested it was aware of the intercepting ships yet did not consider them obstacles. It stopped precisely 1 million kilometers beyond the Council's primary security perimeter. Not violating territory. Not respecting it either. The silence stretched for 17 minutes. Then the transmission arrived. No greeting preceded it. No diplomatic framing softened its tone. Just a calm human voice, gender-neutral and steady. We asked for partnership. You asked for advantage. The message propagated across every council channel simultaneously, bypassing standard encryption hierarchies as though they were suggestions rather than barriers. Data followed. Petabytes of archived communication records, internal memoranda, and strategic analyses flooded the Council systems. Each file verified. Each timestamp confirmed. Private discussions between council factions revealed long-standing strategies to manipulate trade agreements with humanity. Evidence of research delegations subtly redirected to acquire human technological breakthroughs under the guise of academic cooperation. Economic alliances formed specifically to pressure human negotiators into concessions by exploiting their reputation for compromise. Even intelligence reports acknowledging humanity's extensive contributions to galactic stability were buried beneath layers of political calculation. The truth became unavoidable. Many within the Council had treated humanity's cooperative nature as a weakness to be managed, a variable to be optimized, a resource to be leveraged. The human voice continued. We protected the galaxy long before you trusted us. Visual projections appeared alongside the transmission. Hidden defense grids. Unregistered monitoring networks. Containment fields positioned around dormant anomalies, each marked with a simple annotation. Operational until trust degradation threshold reached. The chamber fell silent as council members realized the implication. Humanity had not withdrawn in reaction to a single betrayal. They had withdrawn after measuring a pattern. Trust had not been broken in one moment. It had eroded gradually, through quiet opportunism, strategic half-truths, and assumptions that humans would continue giving regardless of how little they received in return. The data revealed centuries of patience. And a final decision. The High Speaker attempted response protocols. Human representative, he began carefully, the Council acknowledges. The transmission did not pause. Diplomacy requires reciprocity. Additional data streams appeared, showing predictive models of galactic stability before and after humanity's withdrawal. Economic networks fragmenting. Defense response times increasing. Probability curves illustrating rising risk of localized extinction-level events within frontier regions. The human vessel had not come to threaten. It had come to demonstrate. We offered transparency, the voice continued. You offered strategy. Several council delegates attempted to open private communication channels. Every attempt returned the same automated message. Connection declined. Finally, the human transmission displayed a final visual record. An early council session from centuries past. Human diplomats, newly admitted to the interstellar community, presenting proposals for cooperative defense frameworks, shared early warning systems, and ethical research exchange standards. Their language had been earnest, optimistic, hopeful. The proposals had been accepted in principle, then gradually diluted through negotiation until they lost meaningful enforcement mechanisms. The voice spoke one final time. We will not compete for influence. We will not negotiate for permission to help. We will not continue where trust is treated as inefficiency. So, 01 vessel adjusted its orientation slowly. Council defense ships maintained cautious distance, unsure whether they were witnessing the beginning of conflict or the end of something far more fragile. Before departing, the ship transmitted a final packet. A list of systems still at risk without human support. A map of vulnerabilities the Council had never known existed. No demands accompanied the data. No requests for apology. Just information. Then the vessel turned toward the dark expanse beyond charted space. And left. Behind it, the Council remained suspended in a realization more unsettling than hostility. Humanity had not come to negotiate. They had come to explain why they no longer would. In the weeks following the departure of the SOL-01 vessel, the Galactic Council discovered that instability does not always arrive with explosions. Sometimes, it begins with small failures. Trade routes that had functioned flawlessly for centuries began experiencing delays measured not in hours, but in days. Navigation buoys drifted slightly off calibration, creating minor trajectory errors that compounded across vast distances. Communication relays developed fractional desynchronization issues that, while technically insignificant, caused cascading misinterpretations between automated logistic systems. Each problem, by itself, appeared manageable. Together, they formed a pattern. Human-designed coordination protocols had once quietly synchronized thousands of independent infrastructures that had never been built to function as a unified system. Their absence revealed how fragmented the galaxy truly was. Convoys arrived at ports moments too late to meet departure windows. Medical shipments required rerouting due to small discrepancies in predictive supply models. Defense fleets found their response timing misaligned by margins that, in conflict scenarios, could determine survival. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy experienced friction. Not war, not collapse, just inefficiency. And inefficiency, at an interstellar scale, was dangerous. The Council convened emergency committees to replicate the systems humanity had once maintained effortlessly. They quickly discovered that while the technology itself could be studied, the coordination philosophy behind it was far more difficult to reproduce. Human systems had been designed not merely to optimize individual networks, but to anticipate how those networks would interact under stress. Their models accounted for irrational behavior, political hesitation, and biological limitations of species with vastly different cognitive speeds. They had planned for disagreement. They had planned for pride. They had planned for fear. And they had compensated for all of it. Without that invisible adjustment, cooperation became slower, less certain. Meanwhile, reports continued arriving from frontier regions. Dormant anomalies exhibited slight increases in activity. Unstable astrophysical phenomena required closer observation. Several independent colonies reported unexplained sensor interference at system boundaries. None of the incidents escalated into immediate catastrophe. But the trend was unmistakable. Where humanity's quiet safeguards had once absorbed risk before it became visible, now the early signs of danger reached public awareness. Panic did not spread. Concern did. And concern, unlike panic, persisted. The High Speaker ordered a comprehensive review of historical council policy toward humanity. The findings were uncomfortable. Time and again, human proposals emphasizing shared responsibility had been reframed as attempts to gain influence. Their reluctance to demand recognition had been interpreted as lack of ambition. Their willingness to compromise had been mistaken for inability to refuse. The Council had evaluated humanity according to familiar political patterns, and misunderstood a species that had never operated according to those patterns at all. Human diplomacy had not been transactional. It had been structural. They had not been negotiating for advantage. They had been building resilience. Now that resilience had gaps. Across the galaxy, independent governments began initiating their own outreach attempts toward human space. Messages varied in tone. Requests for renewed trade. Offers of formal alliances. Expressions of regret. Most received the same response. Delivery confirmed. No reply. Still, humanity did not disappear entirely. Long-range observatories occasionally detected faint energy signatures consistent with human exploration vessels moving far beyond previously mapped regions. They were not retreating in fear. They were expanding elsewhere, continuing their work. Just no longer for the Council. Months later, a small agricultural world reported an unusual event. A potentially hazardous comet, previously predicted to pass dangerously close to the system's orbital habitats, altered trajectory slightly without explanation. Astronomers initially attributed the shift to natural gravitational variation. Then they detected residual traces of controlled deflection energy, a signature matching outdated human engineering methods. No ship had been observed, no communication received, no acknowledgement given. Only the result remained. The colony was safe. The Council never confirmed the incident publicly, but within restricted circles, the meaning was quietly understood. Humanity had not become hostile. They had not turned against the galaxy. They had simply stopped assuming responsibility for those who did not value it. Somewhere beyond charted space, the species that had once been considered unpredictable idealists continued shaping the unknown, watching, evaluating, deciding carefully where their efforts would matter. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council faced a truth more unsettling than any external threat. Humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology. It had been their willingness to help without needing permission. And now, without that quiet protection, the galaxy was forced to confront a difficult question. If crisis truly came, would humanity choose to return? Or had the door closed forever?